Hey guys, so this video is going to be a little different. I'm going to be ranking every single game that I've played on and off this channel this year. I'm hoping this serves as kind of a general review for games that I didn't get to review on this channel, as well as give you an understanding of my own opinions and what I like and dislike, so that you can better understand my reviews. We're going in order from worst to best, so here we go.
Do you really need this?
Wow, it's No Kuni Crossworlds. First of all, this game isn't even that good. Definitely not the worst thing actually on the market, but because of the NFT bullcrap that this game tried to pull, I really can't like it any more than I do right now. Not to mention it's not very fun or interesting to play. So I'm putting No Kuni Crossworlds down at the bottom here.
Genshin Impact.
So my technical least favorite game of this year is Tower of Fantasy, mostly because the launch was confusing and it took me about 2 hours to get the controller to work properly, even though the game said that it had native controller support. By that point, I really didn't want to play anymore. But there were some good elements. I think the traversal is kind of interesting, and I think that the game could have gotten better if I had more flashy gacha characters. But the thing is that by the time I would even be able to get those characters, I just wasn't interested in playing the game anymore. This one is just disappointing. I was pretty excited for Battle League. I spent a lot of time playing Mario Strikers Charged as a kid, and Battle League unfortunately just doesn't give me that same magic. It could be nostalgia filter, but the game really just doesn't feel the same. I think the scaled down maps make the game feel less fun, and using gear instead of characters for variety just makes all the characters feel the same. The lackluster roster size on launch just doesn't do it for me, and now that they're done adding characters, the game really just doesn't feel like it was worth it. I feel like over the past few years, Nintendo has really missed the mark with Mario sports games, and my main point of view that comes from it is that I just don't think that the post-launch content thing works the way they're doing it.
Please help me.
This game isn't particularly bad. It's fun, and it has rollback now, but the decision to launch without rollback is pretty weird considering the fact that Arceus has been pretty gung-ho about putting rollback into everything. I wasn't expecting a heavy resurgence of Persona 4 Arena, but yeah, this game is really neither amazing nor horrible. It's just okay, and I sure hope that we get Persona 5 Arena sometime soon. Soul Hackers 2 doesn't fall far behind from being the most disappointing game of the year. And I know a lot of people will say, well, you shouldn't have expected Persona 6. But really, even for a lower budget JRPG, this game is just okay. I wasn't really expecting another Persona game or anything like that. I just wanted the game to be good, and the story just doesn't get there. Not to mention with the gameplay, there are too many samey areas, not enough character development for the main cast, as well as kind of a too simplistic battle system that gets old pretty quickly. Soul Hackers 2 at its best is just okay. This is a game I replayed, but I published a review about it, so I figured I'd cover it here too. God Eater 2 is probably my least favorite of the God Eater games. It's a fun game that is ultimately dragged down by bloated missions, minor buggy porting, and some questionable story decisions. Rune Factory 5 finally came out outside of Japan, and it was okay. As usual with most of the games on this list, it was fun, but some of the visual elements are pretty rough. The game is really poorly optimized, at least on the Switch, and the story kind of fails to stick the landing. It's nice to see Rune Factory back, but with the year between the release of the Japanese version and the Western one, it feels like they could have tried at least a little bit harder to make it run better. That said, outside of that, and maybe if you have a strong enough PC to play the Steam version without any issues, this game is actually pretty fun. It's not absolutely amazing, and as I said, the story kind of fails to stick the landing, but it's pretty okay, and it's a lot of fun.
Please don't laugh at my pain.
Well, initially, I really liked Three Hopes. I put a lot of time into this game. I do actually really like Muso titles. They're simple games for simple fun, but as I spent more time with this game, I began to feel like it really wasn't allowed to shine. Maybe it's the fact that the story just kind of ends, and a lot of things go unexplained, or are explained through just a big wall of text. Or maybe it's the fact that in an interview with the director and the producer, we learned that Being allowed to write a story that made it seem like the cast was better off without Byleth was off the table. This game is almost so good. Probably better than Three Houses in terms of story, but so much goes unanswered. There's so much that gets off-screened, and ultimately this game just doesn't feel like it gets its chance to do what it wants to do. All just because of the idea that it would be too sad for players who like Three Houses, which is stupid. Then why would you make this game? You have a main character who actually is a character, and it honestly really helps the game flow along. This game is ultimately very good for probably almost the whole entirety of its runtime, and then the ending comes and it's just bad. It obviously has been said before, but this is the best Pokemon has been, while simultaneously being the worst it's ever been. Whether or not you experience major issues during your playthrough, there's no doubt in my mind that Scarlet and Violet run pretty subpar. For all the good this game has given us, from the open world to the Pokédex Battle Pass to the funny Pokemon designs, there are things that the game just takes away, like its ability to run at a stable frame rate. I don't have a lot to say that hasn't been said, but I really do hope that Game Freak, the Pokemon Company, and Nintendo, and I don't care which one is responsible because it has to be at least one of them, gives the next Pokemon game more time to cook in the oven so that it can come out as good as it should be. We seriously don't need a Pokemon game every year. I could wait like 2-3 years in between titles, and we didn't need 2 this year. You could have made Legends Arceus the game for the holiday season and delayed Scarlet and Violet to next year. I never thought Pokemon would make capturing the most entertaining mechanic in the game, but here we are. Legends Arceus pulls off this concept super well. It's a lot of fun and feels like the Pokemon game we were waiting for. Everything is so snappy. It's not the best looking game, and the story is, well, not great, but that's Pokemon. I would be lying if I said the game wasn't fun, and at the end of the day, it doesn't rank higher just because it feels like a proof of concept that should be expanded on in the future, and Scarlet and Violet does make that pretty clear. God Eater 3 is a pretty big step up from 2, pretty much redefines the main series' focus point of utilizing burst as a mechanic. However, the soundtrack isn't as strong as the first game, and the story doesn't stick the landing as well either. It plays very well into its gameplay strengths, and I hope to see more God Eater in the future. This game is overall pretty good, but it still didn't hit the marks that the first game did for me. I played Honkai Impact 3rd from start to finish this year. Or start to up to date. It's quite an experience getting into a mobile game years after it's released. The UI is hard to look at for me, there are too many currencies for me to understand, and my brain doesn't even want to comprehend the front-end boatload of information shoved in my face when I unlock new mechanics. But that aside, what Honkai offers is a fantastic story that does start a little bit slow, but when it needs to deliver, there's no question that Hoyoverse goes all out. Major arcs end with fully animated cinematics with their own vocal tracks. The stories themselves are just very well done. The game still has some core issues like playable segments that should be cutscenes, and modes that contain story that probably shouldn't be mentioned until the main story ends. But it's still overall a great experience, even if it does feel very mobile at its core. God Eater Resurrection, in my opinion, has the best story in the series. It feels like your unit is cohesive, and each of them get a little bit of time to develop over the course of the game. The gameplay might be dated, and the graphics might be not as good as God Eater 3, but it still holds up. It's a game that I do have biases towards, as I have been a fan of the series for almost a decade, and I continue to hope that Bandai will pursue these stories and characters in the future with God Eater 4. Please make God Eater 4, Bandai. I'm asking so nicely.
Genshin Impact.
I thought a lot about making a full video for this, but I figured it's better just to stick this in here for now. Genshin's newest story arc is the best yet in the game. From start to finish, it's pretty much a whole story of an RPG. There's a lot of content in the past few months that just makes it feel like Genshin is at its best. The game really doesn't disappoint, and it continues to keep its plot and characters at least somewhat engaging. A lot of stuff has been set up since pretty early on, and it makes the overall experience just a lot better. While Genshin still retains its core issues like slow progression, Hoyoverse is making sure that the story it wants to tell is being told, and they aren't holding back in making each arc higher production value than the last.
I need a monster to claw with that there Kirby.
There are 2 Nintendo games, that I really think succeeded this year. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a unforgettable experience. While rather short, the game never stops giving you a reason to play through its whole campaign. The level design is just so well done, with tighter and more compact designed stages that feel like they're offering you more freedom with your new range of movement. It's always so special when a Kirby game gets to feel like it got everything right, and Forgotten Land is no different in that regard. It's a beautiful and amazingly entertaining game from start to finish, and if you haven't played it, I highly recommend you try it. Kirby can always feel pretty easy as a game, but difficulty doesn't have to mean that a game can't be fun. If you asked me about 10 months ago whether I was going to play Elden Ring, I would have told you no. Souls-like games were something that I was never completely interested in. I usually avoided them because I figured I'd get stuck somewhere, get frustrated, and give up. I'm not much of a challenges guy. I like games to be easy and relaxing, but Elden Ring finds a way to make that challenge just so much less intimidating than your average Souls-like. With its focus on freedom and its open world, it gives the player a lot of options in order to mitigate the challenge a little bit. You don't have to be the best player in the world to finish this game properly. The triumph of stomping out a boss after your 10th, 20th, or 30th try is just so satisfying. I never thought I'd fully see the appeal of a Souls game, but Elden Ring has done it. That said, the game isn't above having flaws. I think the scale of the game winds up working against it towards the end. In order to keep things hard, the game feels like it just starts ramping up damage instead of creating new and interesting foes. It's nice that some of the early bosses wind up being basic enemies in the late game to show how much you've progressed, but sometimes they repeat bosses just a little bit too much. Perhaps there's a lore reason for it, but really from a gameplay perspective, I'm just not as happy to watch them repeat the same 3-skin, 4-skin guys again. But while I do have my issues with it, not to mention some of the attacks that enemies have in the late game, to me just feel a little bit unfair. But that said, the game is just so good otherwise that I really can't rank it any lower. Elden Ring truly is something special, and if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend you do. Monster Hunter Rise is a really good Monster Hunter game. World, the series opened its door to new fans by making the scale of the maps huge, but it toned down mechanics for a better new player experience. Rise basically adds mechanics that are good for new players and interesting for veterans. It's certainly a fun and exhilarating experience, with the amount of movement options you get. You can dash in and out of sticky situations, and you get access to a whole new range of verticality, which is something I wish I had in other games. Not only that, but the battlefield is whatever you want it to be. You can climb walls and jump off them and use them to rocket around. It's just a very fun and interesting gameplay design. For all the good Rise has, though, it feels like half the monsters just aren't able to keep up with you. A lot of monsters are ported, I think, from other games, and outside of the major new ones like Magnum Malo, Narwa, and Ibushi, it feels like enemies just totally can't compete with your skill set as a hunter. But that's where the next game shines. Though you may consider this an expansion, Sunbreak is basically a second Monster Hunter Rise. Though it can't expand the scale of the locales to reach the height of World, what Sunbreak offers you is a better and more challenging gameplay experience. It seems like they focused on developing each new monster, variant or not, to keep up with the hunter. It gives your hunter new tools like the ability to switch skills mid-combat, but it also provides its newly added monsters with tools to keep pace with you in combat, essentially fixing the main issue I had with Rise. Sunbreak almost fixes every single problem I had with Rise. Now it's only a matter of time before the next big console Monster Hunter hopefully comes out. If we could get the scale of World with the gameplay of Rise, I would be a very happy person. 13 Sentinels is exactly what a visual novel should be. The story is the main focus, but the presentation is also top-notch. Without a doubt, if you have a game that is all narrative and very little gameplay, then this is probably one of the best ways to execute it so that it stands out. As a game, though, 13 Sentinels is probably not incredibly amazing, but the writing in this game truly is what makes it special. Sure, you're still stuck with a lot of anime tropes and whatnot, but it's still amazing, and I'd recommend people play it, because a narrative as well written as this is incredibly rare. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was by far my most anticipated game of this year, and it delivers on almost every note. It's a game that clearly has learned from the feedback that its predecessors received, and it tells a story that is just so strong from start to finish. The game is a combo of 1 and 2, while also giving you the power to field your entire party, something that most modern JRPGs don't dare to try. From OST to the visuals, the game delivers as well as it can, and it doesn't rest for anything or anyone. The highest heights it reaches make the lowest lows forgivable and forgettable. This game is an absolute masterpiece, and, well...
It's a wild ride, this passage of fate.
So yeah, that's my list and my rankings. I know this was pretty rapid fire, and I didn't really elaborate too much on my points with most of the games, but I don't think making a video that stretches out 5 hours long is something that everyone wants to watch. But I guess if you do, you could leave a comment about it. I did bump down 13 Sentinels just a little bit because I felt like since the game has been out for almost 3 years, it would be kind of unfair for me to slap it at the top of my list for this year. I also disqualified Persona 5 Royal because we all know, as me being a giant Persona fan, that would be the game to win the top spot. But this year was a pretty good year for video games, so why don't you let me know your top picks for this year in the comments. For a minute though, I just wanted to talk about the channel a little bit. I know it's been trending a lot towards Persona content, and I hope I can keep creating videos that you guys want to watch. This upcoming year, things might change a little bit. I might try to do more different other JRPGs, or they might not. But either way, I'm grateful to all of you who at least try and give my videos a watch. Whether it be for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, or the entire length. So as always, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel for more things related to Persona, Atlas, JRPGs, and anime style games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.